Hello, chess friends. This is International Master Valeri Lilov, and today I would like to represent some of the main ideas that you're going to learn within this 8 hours long course on tactics and calculation. See, this course is a little different than the usual courses in tactics and calculation. This is focused on one single opening and how the different tactics and combinations can actually happen in this opening, the key patterns, and what you could repetitively get to use. I have prepared more than 50 different examples in games, master games, that combine all the critical patterns that a chess player needs to learn in order to thoroughly follow each and every one of these. These are all new games that have been actually played in the last 5 years, from 2014 until 2018. These positions are actually combined of all the different combinations and tactics that you could actually see on every level. And yet I managed to maintain the focus on the single opening without actually having to deviate on bringing up other type of underlying positional and strategic examples that don't relate. So you're pretty much in for the ride on that one specific openings, but don't take that for granted. There's a lot of different ideas you're going to learn, a lot of specific things that relate to dynamic positions and tactics. And while you certainly are going to learn a lot about the structures of the opening and the typical patterns that repeat and combine and happen over again and again, you can also learn a lot about how to play those type of positions that may occur in wide range of different type of opening lines and systems. Also, the great thing about it is that I'm actually including general sections on the key best advice that you could follow about calculation, evaluation, and combinational strategy. I hope that these 50 different games with many different examples on the tactics of Dragon are going to help you to see how to think and what to keep in mind whenever you get to play this opening. One of the most important ideas is that by listening to these over and over and being able to review those games, you're going to create a wide, major scope of repertoire that you could use in any game, whether it's Blitz, Rapid, or Tournament Classical Chess. I hope you have a fun time with it, and good luck playing the dragon. We're going to cover some of the most typical ideas in the dragon related to the key sacrifices. This section is going to be based on what are some of the things that you have to pay attention and essentially avoid. Also, what are the different tactical sequences that you can use to break down the opponent's king side defense. Just friends, this is International Master Valeri, and today I'm going to begin my course on the most recent tactics in the Sicilian Dragon. When I was younger, the Dragon Variation has been one of the most impressive to me, and I was able to achieve some incredible, knowledge and results with it. So I'd like to give you some insights, some good recommendations on how you can follow it, and what you can do with it. So we're looking at a game that was played between Peter Sherwood and Yi Wang. That game was played in the San Francisco Fall Open in 2014. And I think it's a good example of a player who was an expert level, yet he managed to effectively utilize all the important tactics that really come down with such an opening. So let us actually take a look and see what it was all about. So after the moves of e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, the exchanges basically lead to the dragon. So what we have right here is a structure, the familiar idea of a dragon setup with the bishop on g7, black's idea to castle, and not only to exercise different type of pressure versus the queen side, but also to get ready and help black out with his development. You can do knight c6, bishop d7, rook c8, so on and so forth. This is really convenient, really easy, if I may say. So that's basically how it all goes. And then after that move, white plays with the move of f3. So this is quite interesting. What goes after the move of f3? How does it continue? Well, after that was actually played, black plays now short castles. And you realize that this is one of the most sharp openings for a number of reasons. I'd say that the key reason for this is because when you're playing the dragon, what you're really doing is you're actually setting up for a very effective attack on the queen's side. Now, whether white actually picks up to do the castling on the long side, or if he doesn't, it's really not that important so much. What is important, however, is that we care about our way of going. Everything that goes on the queen's side, everything that goes against the white king, is definitely something that black is gonna rely on, and he's gonna want to be a part of it. So how does this whole thing continue here? Well, pretty much after the move knight c6, white played with long side castles bishop d7 and g4. And his intention was fairly clear. I mean, what he's looking to do is just, move ahead, advance with moves like h4, and just go on the king's side. The good news for black is that he also intends the same thing, and he'll do that on the queen's side by setting up the rook on c8. What you gotta understand is that every tactic, in particular, begins with the simple idea that we need more pieces as a setup. The set of pieces that we get against our opponent is what will guarantee a lot of the opportunities that are most necessary for our tactics to exist. This is the thing that black is going for in this position. Very importantly, white advances with h4. So what do we do next? Knight e5, and now after h5, queen a5. The setup continues. Now, the mechanics behind any successful tactic always talk about the idea that if you want to make it work, you've got to have the right set, not just of forces, but development in order to break through. And while it's definitely not a very easy thing, we can do it. King b1, and now comes a fantastic idea. Now, finding out a move like knight takes f3 is incredibly difficult, especially if you're not certain about the tactic. But then, if you know the typical weaknesses inside your opponent's position, that makes it much easier to find out where he's weak or what's vulnerable. Looking around white's position, we realize that his center is the area of the board where he is actually most protected, yet he's not that strong. That gives black a perfect resource. Very beautiful, very important, and effective. So what we do is we expand right there into the play. The first move to go by is knight takes f3. This move by itself is amazing, for a number of reasons actually. The most important of which is that after the move of knight takes f3, essentially you see that in case white takes back with the knight, the perfect idea of advancing with rook takes the c3 takes place. So it doesn't just help black to break down the white defenses, but it practically destroys the whole center that is in front of white at this point in time. This is a beautiful idea that seems to work out perfectly. And then you could see the effect. The fact is that white didn't have a choice of knight takes f3. Now he's got a choice how he can capture on c3, but that choice really doesn't make much difference. How is that? Well, for example, if white picks up to do the move of b takes the c3, we realize that very quickly black is going to do the move of knight takes to the e4. And there's practically no good defense on the queen and d2, the c3, and the king. Finding tactics like this requires knowing the different weaknesses. And truth is, that's not always very easy. So, really getting that rook takes the c3 to work is what helps black to break. Sets up the tactic. It just completely immerses every single one of the black pieces into the into the tactic, and it's impossible. White certainly cannot do anything to make it work. What happens next? Well, black plays bishop takes the g4 out there, and then we can find out is that once white plays with the move of bishop e2, we realize there's knight takes d4. The tactical combination here applies effectively two things. We get more pieces, and then of course we have the possibility to go ahead with more challenges. We have a shot against the c3. We get a best possibility to utilize the bishop out there, and actually it's quite wonderful to get everything going. What white can do is to play rook to the d3 in this moment, but then okay, there's knight next to the c3, rook takes the c3, bishop takes the c3, and you could see it's all over for white. One of the things that I love about this combination is that it doesn't rely on the quick and immediate break. And we often can't do a quick or immediate break. It's much more about just getting the pieces right, and then soon or later something really important is going to happen. It's that power. And after knight takes to the c3, the e2 is definitely hanging. He doesn't have that many moves. So what white played was rook takes the c3, bishop takes the c3. So black is a piece down, but he's got those 4 pawns like an avalanche that he can start moving upon. And then once he moves with e5 or d5, he will be able to effectively, just drive all those pieces of his against white's position, and especially the king. So it's quite beautiful, really. White plays rook to the h2, and then, of course, this was a mistake. White should have probably exchanged on the g6, hoping that maybe he can play bishop c4, but I think he just didn't realize the danger, and then there was bishop takes h5. It's, when people get in a bad position, what happens is that they usually tend to panic. They don't know what to do or how to continue, and they end up playing moves like rook h2, which just added another extra pawn to black's advantage, additionally to all that he's got so far. And white has sacrificed. That was apparently a mistake. It's just that white was panicking already. It's not the kind of position in which you could do something, but it is definitely the kind of position in which you just feel the danger of all the pieces. So it's like after that, when white really took on the g4, g takes h, it was a disaster. Bishop takes a7, f5, and then rook f6. Now it doesn't have to do anything with the tactic or the combination that black produced, but it's nevertheless it was just so strong. It was just so effective. So in the end of the day, white was in trouble. What I really love about this is once again the tactic with knight takes f3, which we could actually see happening in other cases too. This is not just the only way on how that kind of tactic could actually work. We could do it just as well in a different game. I'm going to show you how a master did it in a slightly different order right now. In the game that the master was actually playing here, the master with black pieces was playing versus another expert level player, and it basically started like this: d4, exchange, knight f6, g6, bishop g7, a6. Now I'm not a great fan in particular of this line with the g6 and this, because I know that generally speaking this is not supposed to cause that much damage or trouble. However, it is exciting, it is interesting, especially realizing the power of the pieces. And then it's like it's more flexibility that black is giving to his own set of forces and everything, and then we can do more through that. So it's just a matter of time, obviously. Now what white plays is longside castles b5. What is great about these type of openings is that it doesn't really require too much time to get the potential and the possibilities working. It's black can do them really effective as long as he keeps going on the right area. When white played g4, This was the time when black played knight to the b6, pawn to the g5, knight to the d7, h4, bishop b7. See, look at the development. Essential thing about those kind of structures is the idea of a development. When you focus on developing your pieces really like this, it brings something quite unique to the position. And what it brings is the chance to expand. Black has a perfect idea of going forward with b4. And then as white played with e3, black just played knight to the a5. It was a wonderful set of pieces. We are moving ahead and actually able to deliver moves like the move of knight to the e5 shortly, so that's not going to be really a question. But it's kind of excellent the way and how it all works. Let's take the time, build up the position, and really get ourselves ready for more. The regrouping in the dragon type of line helps out brilliantly because we're taking on not just any pieces, but some of the best pieces and able to really resourcefully deliver them some of the best positions available. And that's kind of huge. Actually, after the knight e5, almost each and every one of the black pieces is already wonderful. So what does white do now? b3? And that was, I have to say, this was very, very passive actually in that moment because it defends the c4 square, but it's not a good thing. And black plays rook to the c8. So it's now we understand the whole idea. Now we've got the c3 that is effectively put under pressure. Most of white's own forces just feel like they can't move out so easily. And we just continue. That's the idea. Remember, the plan in this kind of situation is regroup, develop, and improve. That's all we need to do. Let's just take the pieces and really set them up on the squares that they need to be. So that's a good thinking. And then, for example, right after the move of rook to the c8, we've got queen to the c7. And so actually after bishop h3, black plays knight takes f3. The same sort of idea. We're basically getting to push the opponent likes knight out of the way. So we could threaten him on the c3. And it works great. Bishop takes the c8 was what white actually did. But he didn't have to do it. He could have just played with the move of knight takes f3. It's just that after knight takes f3, black can do bishop takes to c. A very effective kind of tactic that breaks through white's own pieces and everything. So after knight takes f3, white plays bishop takes the c8, and then there was the move of knight takes d2. Bishop takes b7, knight to c4. B takes to the c, knight takes to the c. White gave a check, but then black's king runs out, and then of course black's winning. Knight takes f3 this time wasn't just an idea to make sure that we break down his pieces. It was a plan with which ultimately all of black's own forces came into the attack. It was really effective and vulnerable for white. Very, very important idea. So remember, oftentimes to make such a tactic available, you really need to get your pieces. But in order to do that, you have to, regroup them, set them together. Then things can work. In this next game, we see a game that was played between Simon Lieb and Catherine Lesser. Now, Simon Lieb was 2100. Again, we're looking at games that were not played by grandmasters, but players like you guys, essentially advanced players, good players, who just want to find out the right way to advance or attack against white. So in this particular game, black played the dragon. He actually went on with a very quick development. Again, we see the idea of playing with a6, something pretty efficient in those type of positions. And then we're really kind of going with this so that we could wait. It's very, very important. Let's build up the position to the point where something important, something more challenging can happen. What's going on next now? Well, the reality is that After queen to the d2, black played knight bd7, b5, and exchange. Now, you might actually get to say that this is a bit difficult. This is like a bad type of plan. But then think about that. In a particular case, the whole idea with queen takes to the h6, bishop b7 feels a bit early for white. And it's not to say that it is early because in general it doesn't work. It's early because there is very little development and backup that white has added. So the truth is that most of his own pieces are really missing, and that gives black a huge amount of tempi and resources to make things right. So that's the idea. Let's keep it up. After that, white played alongside the move of knight b3, and then black plays queen c7, rook e1, and rook to c8. Now, take a look at what black is actually getting for. He is moving along the queen side with the simple idea to prepare b4 or just run into different tactics on that side. It's going to take a little bit of time, but ultimately that's the main idea. We've got plans like b4, a5, or more, just in time. If those moves are played, we're going to drive white's pieces out of the way, and we're going to be actually going or delivering all the different, tactical things that we need. Remember that, though. You must pick an area of the board and set it up against the opponent. Challenge him there. So now white played with bishop to the d3, and of course that led to knight e5, naturally. We're bringing up that knight, setting it so that basically the opponent has enough to worry. He played queen d2, and then there was short castles. Yeah, no need to worry. That rook is now going to probably go to the d8. We can always think about a move of knight to the c4 if necessary. You see, that's the good news is that white's attacks usually don't work as good or as easily because he needs a lot of time to really bring them together. And that time, black is using to not just develop his own pieces, but really build it upon that whole idea of the queen side. So it's strong and it's efficient and it works. That's what basically black is playing for. Let's just keep the opponent a bit more backward, and that would work. After that move was done, apparently with the b4 in mind, white has a little more to be concerned of because his knight is being pushed. And just looking at that in this way, it's like, what does he have to do now? Knight e2, and then after knight e2, there's a5. There's no tactic yet, but you could see the tendency here, and the tendency really shows that black is brilliant. Just the very fact that he continues to advance at such a pace, it shows that his whole activity on that queen side is amazing. So what do we do next? After that, a5, and then knight d2. What would you guys do? Imagine that you have that build up in preparation. Everything seems to work on this side of the board. So how do we prove that something really valuable can work? What do we really do? Well, it was d5. I love that move for a number of reasons, the most important being it opens. Even though it's not a direct tactic, it gets our pieces ready so we could actually get it started. After the exchange, there is knight takes to the e5 that basically black picked up to do. And then we could see that now with the move of knight b5, there was queen to the b8. You see, slowly but very efficiently, black has managed to arrange his pieces to come closer. The knight's already in the center. Most of black's own pieces feel well advanced on the queen side. And white made a terrible mistake. He should have never done that kind of move, but he did it after all. And the idea is don't ever move on the area where you're weak. I don't understand why white played that move, but either way, that was bad. So what should black do now? You guys have any suggestion? Well, with the rook on c8, with the preparation in place, and with everything as well as it can be, there's only one thing that we need. Rook d8. Perfect. Let's get the rook forward. Let's keep the opponent a little bit behind as he is. We're not only having the d file but open, but also the d3. and we're basically able to advance against with b takes the c, knight takes d3. It's just a matter of time. It is so good that the reality is none of white's pieces are even remotely in condition to fight back and come towards so that they could challenge over or push back some of black's own pieces. That it is that good. With rook to the d8 and the actual extra tension against the opponent, apparently white is in a bit of trouble. He played queen to the g5, hoping to escape and run down, but it didn't really matter because black plays knight x to the c3, and this is where the tactic takes place. So when everything is ready, when all the position is in place and the possibilities are set, we've got the tactic. But the tactic doesn't just come out of thin air. We do it based on everything that's built, based on all the right circumstances that are actually in position. So finally, there is this move of knight x to the c3 that simply works out like a charm. Takes, knight takes d3. It hits the knight on c3, keeps the rook on e1 at the challenge, and you could see the real reason why white's actually going to lose almost in this position. It's not so much because of black's pieces, it's about everything that does go. I don't know, like this position undergoes a tremendous change, but black is amazing. He's got the two rooks, he's got the queen, and has got the value. It's like all up there. So it's just a matter of time. White played knight f2. Black does rook to the d2. White goes with queen b5. Black plays bishop to a6. So what you really must think about, what you really need to do when it comes down to such positions is ask yourself, what pieces are most important or necessary for me to really bring into my attack? You get them there. You build up the position of power. And I guarantee you, soon or later, the tactic or the line of break is going to come. You just need to be ready. With that in mind, of course, bishop a6 is tremendous. The queen and the knight are, completely useless and unable to defend or stay together. White's king and the b1 just doesn't feel all that great, and I think that's just the beginning, of course. He lost it. I love this game for a number of reasons, the most important being the build-up. Again, we see in all these games a recurring pattern is that the tactic doesn't just go. It's very meticulously prepared and situated so that once we already have everything in line, we just kind of keep improving while we wait for the opportunity to come and break through. It's all these developing pieces and moves that allow eventually a move like knight x to the c3 to take place and work out like a charm. I want to show you another incredible example that has this idea. This was played between Max Muller, rated 2035, and Hans Ewert, rated 2151. It's played a couple years ago, and it's a great example showing how you can create possibilities as black. Truth is, in the dragon, it's not that difficult to create possibilities, but oftentimes you can find yourself a bit slower and a little bit, in a difficult position, especially when it comes down to how you can attack. So it's an interesting idea to look for different ways on how things can work. So I'm going to actually show you how you could do this very successfully in your game. So let's talk a bit about that and see. In this game, basically, white started with e4, c5, knight f3, d4, exchange, knight c3, the dragon again. We all know the initial order. However, after black played rook c8, knight e5, he also did the move of h5. A wonderful idea, basically planned towards the g4 square. So white can't advance with a move like pawn up to the g4. And we also realize that after black blockades, black succeeds with the blockade, it's going to give him a little bit of time to advance his own activity. That's not a huge amount of time, nor it's actually something amazing, but it does feel right. As white played bishop to the h6, black exchanged it, white recaptures, and this was a good moment where black could actually start thinking about the things that he can do on his own. Take a moment to think about this yourself. What should black try to do or deliver in the position right now? We're getting a good amount of space. The rook is perfect. The setup is good. But what is the right idea? What would you do? Apparently, this was the moment where black had to figure out a way to get in. To really attack and threaten, it's not a very easy thing to do. So, the best idea on how to deliver some of it obviously became clear with the next move. Rook takes the c3. If I gotta be honest, this is a fantastic sequence. This is the kind of move that we do in order to not just open the opponent, but actually break down everything that White was fighting for. It's beautiful. It's important. It's threatening. It's all those things and more. A typical sacrifice that breaks down the White King's side like this isn't only done in order to tactically work out. Remember, a sacrifice could be done so that it can tactically succeed. But oftentimes, it is the pressure that we care about a lot more. It is what goes after the sacrifice. That's what really matters. And Black knew this as he went on to play Queen a5. A really great move that sets the possibility of advancing and bringing up not just pressure against c3 but also Queen a3 as a fantastic, fascinating move. What goes next is very difficult for White. None of the White pieces, even the extra material, could create a necessary amount of trouble or challenges over the Black King's side. And yet, after the sacrifice on c3, suddenly each of Black's own pieces are actually jumping ahead and beginning what I would call an incredible attack over the White position. With that move in mind, of course, we also realize that there is going to be rook to the c8, there is Queen a3, there is everything and anything. All those moves feel like the perfect way on how Black is arranging his pieces so they can start advancing. Well, that definitely felt like the right way to get it going, and surely after that, of course, White plays g4, his queen next to the c. What would have happened if White didn't do this? Possibly if he would have actually gone with a move of queen to the d2. Well, in that case, Black could do Queen a3 check. And we realize that after King b1 and then pawn a5, Black simply advances. He continues with this. He could push the opponent back. Likely, if White plays Queen c1, there could be the idea of going back with the queen. But then the a4 threat simply continues. Should White bring it down? I think the idea could be to play queen next to the c3 very powerfully. And if he doesn't, truth is a4 is still there. It's just a very hard move to deal by. It's a bad position. Even in case of a3, queen next to the c3, a4 is still up there. The White queen and the rest of his backside pieces certainly do not look like they're actually pretty beautiful. So White advanced with g4 in hope that this will give him a chance to attack on King's side. It was good, I have to admit. Problem is, it doesn't matter. You see, if White is to succeed, he needs to create threats. And at this particular moment, there are none. Even with the pawn on the g4, it still doesn't become clear how this is going to advance anywhere. So it's just a move that attempts to do something similar to what Black is actually doing, but it never gets to that level. So White knew it. So King b1 and a5. The moment, no matter what White did, Black is obviously superior. a4 is coming. The White King is bad, and the rest of his pieces remain down and back. So let's get it going. Well, after that, surely White attempted a3, a4, bishop a2, and then there was the move of rook a8. I find it amazing how a tactical position not through a sequence of brilliant forcing moves, even though many people think it's all about that. But it is guided by a sequence of significant, solid moves that practically help us out with the major possibility to get and acquire more forces right down that area where we want to attack. This is amazing now because this rook at this point, the black rook, has just gotten the ability to move towards a6 and b6. And guess what? We have the time to do it all simply because there is nothing else. There's nothing dangerous that white can do. G takes h, rook a6. A rook to the b6 really looks dangerous. See, the sacrifice on c3 really provided all of that. And white just didn't know what to do. Even if he came back with the queen in the d2, black would have just taken a3 and rook to the b6, and all these moves just, they're kind of unstoppable in a way. It's so beautiful. It's so difficult to stop. So he didn't know what to do, or rather how to stop this. So white jumps out with a knight on f5. Bishop takes f. Pawn takes. Rook b6 check. Queen takes a3. Queen takes a2. And we suddenly realize, okay, well, white's done. He doesn't have the ability to open up. Certainly cannot do anything to break through. He tried h takes g, check, check again, and now black just stabilizes. Being a lot of material ahead provides you with a great ability to just keep it up, and then a couple moves like knight d3, check, and rook to the b2 definitely gives us the freedom and the chance to kick. The king comes back, we got queen f2, which will be a disaster. And even if it doesn't, I mean, it's game over. This is a great example of one of the most typical combinations in the dragon, which is the rook takes the c3 breakthrough that helps us to dispose ourselves of the opponent's good defenders. There was a very interesting game that was played between Lu Wuka and he was 1758 playing against Christian Dietz. This game was actually played in the German Hanover Championship under 20, and it presents a really good example of how a certain tactical position can occur, and something like a little trap you could follow even yourselves. By playing the move of bishop d7, black kind of got himself a little ahead. Usually this is a move you want to do once your opponent has actually chosen to castle long, because but once he's placed bishop c4, because if he castles long without bishop c4, that may give him an opportunity to save a little time instead of playing bishop to the c4. But I don't think that black was really that worried about this mostly, and so with a transposition, things worked out. Black got himself forward with rook to the c8, and then after bishop to the b3, and this line, things work out. H4, b5. It's an interesting idea how black advances now that pawn on the b, despite everything else, simply by sacking the pawn, giving it away, just so we can get the file for the play and the different tactics. It is solid, it's consistent, and it seems to be going exactly where we need it to be. Going forward, like carrying after the white king side, and then just even being able to deliver more different challenges in this position. That looks good. So what's happening after b5 now? After the move of b4, b5, there's definitely knight c4 or b4 that we'd like to do. So what can we get ahead with? How can we play this? So white plays now at king b1, and then after king b1, there was the candidate of actually this is a very, very important move. Black instantly did the move of b4. Let's drive him away, push him back, and then after the move of b4, once white played with knight to the e2, black just carried forward with the move of a5. a5 is good because, after we go ahead with the move of a5, we have the ability to go at a4. c3, a4. White plays bishop to the c2 and knight c4. See, the more white keeps on playing at that area of the board, harder it was for him to make anything useful. Black opens up, he really gets ready, and then we have the attack going with knight to the c4. So it was a useful move. We got b2, we got b6 to the c3 we can do, queen to the b6 in this position. and things actually don't look so bad after all. In the end of the day, we're ready. What I like to tell you is that, it's not just going to help. I mean, if you play with moves like that, it is going to help you. But first and foremost, arrange those pieces. Let's talk about that. For example, practically after the move of knight of the c4, then what we're seeing is that now once white plays with queen to c1, black just continues with e5. It is a good looking threat, challenging his knight on the d4, and then you realize this. All his other pieces just don't feel like they can do anything. His knight is not able to go back because we're going to take it, and any of his other pieces don't feel like they can go anywhere either. C takes to the b, and then what is actually going to happen right now? What do we do? Well, let's think. I mean, the reality is that with all that, all those backside forces in play, black doesn't have to worry about being able to attack. He plays knight takes to e3, and then after the move of knight takes to the e3, queen takes to the e3, there's e takes to the d. So you see black already won a piece. But what he continues with is the pressure. The most valuable in such a position is really carry on, continue with the pressure. Queen e7, queen e5, and then rook c8. Now, of course, apparently black is winning, and he's got almost every single piece in an active position, one of the major goals of this opening. But the key is to find out what more do we need to do in this position. What else do we have to? So following through, black had to really think or consider what was actually missing out on. While the rooks, the queen, even the Darshka bishop has a lot of potential together with the knight, there was one piece that just felt like it was constantly out and, like away. And what was that piece? Apparently, it was all about that light square bishop. It's unable to find its way forward, and it is a little behind. So, what we must do is actually think about attacking or even threatening the opponent. How do we do that? Apparently, it's all about bishop to the b5. Strong, efficient, and ready. If the knight from the c3 is forced to move away, surely it's going to weaken the b2 defense, and we need that so that we can get the attack. Bishop b5. Think about this. What is the kind of piece that we most need in order to get the threats going? What is the piece that we need to remove as well? Because what black didn't just need the light square bishop, he also needed to make sure that the c3 knight is removed. And, it was great. After bishop b5, knight takes to the b, and then knight takes g4, there is a huge attack or a great threat that's happening against the b2, the c2, almost everything basically in that position. And as white's queen goes right down, of course we're able to play with rook takes to the c2, queen takes to the c, taking. If you look at this, none of white's pieces, including that rook on the d3, are in condition to fight back. Why? Because everything is active. The secret to the black tactics in this opening, it lies within the ability to make sure you keep advanced and active pieces. And just like that, after rook takes the c2, queen takes b2, and then knight f2, it was game over. It was beautiful, it was simple, it was efficient. That's one of the ways on how you could see a speed plan being introduced with the idea to both get more pieces and definitely acquire more lines right down where we were actually going to play. It was really well played, it was greatly done, it was efficient. It's all you need, and that's how you need to do it. So I want to show you another super interesting example of a typical attack with sacrifices that can take place in this opening. Now this is from the game that was played between Thomas Mikulenka and his opponent was Bar Orn. These were players like around, below 2000, but still, it's good to see those kinds of games because you can learn a great deal about how to think and what to do in those kind of situations. So black started off pretty nicely. He developed well. He got his knight on the f6, g6, bishop g7, castles. And now there's the d5. Now, a very typical idea in these kinds of positions presents itself once we really get to go with something like this. You have to understand that. The point being is that every time when the opponent allows that type of d5 break is the move which itself gives black the opportunity, the idea to feel stronger. Now, is there more to that? Definitely. But right now, it's what we're doing it for, and you got to know it this way. The reason why we're doing this in this way is because it simply gives black an incredible amount of pieces and a good set of challenges. After b takes the c, white played this, and then goes queen a5. You may be wondering now, why doesn't white just take the d5 immediately? I mean, he could have. The truth is, he could have done that kind of move. But, black could continue with the move of b takes to the c, c takes, e takes to the d, captures, and then after that, knight takes to the d5 in that moment. Surely, black could just exchange, takes, and then there is queen to c7. Of course, we got the idea of playing with a move like bishop f5 next move, so in case white ends up taking the rook, there's going to be bishop f5, queen takes f8, maybe even king takes f8. We got c2 to actually pressure against. We've got the dark square bishop ready, and we have possibilities of like just king h8. Now, this is a common line that is just usually leads to equality. But white didn't want to do it. He got a little scared, so he played just a little move like h4. Makes a great sense. The whole idea is let's just get going with h5. If the position opens, eventually white's pieces are going to get ready. And yeah, it actually does feel like a normal move. Nothing to worry. Let's just get things opened up. Now what does black do right now, seeing this? Of course, we could go in different ways, but the key is that black just wanted to be very specific here. He didn't just want to play it normally. What black wanted to do was place that queen right up on the a5, and then what we are seeing is now there's going to be an effective move of rook b8. There's going to be the challenge to attack against the opponent's b2. There's going to be queen to the b4. And actually, that's a great way to follow. And so, one of the things that you've got to remember is keep the pressure on. Keep your pieces lined up and ready. And so, for example, after that move, white plays king b1, and then black plays rook to the b8. Knight takes d5. So here white thought, you know what? I'm going to do it right. I'm going to break through with knight takes to the d5, attacking the queen on a5. And I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this right. Well, he was kind of right about that. I mean, it does look like a move that's supposed to happen because it feels interesting. But what you need to remember, and this is huge, most people don't think about it like that, but you gotta, is that first and foremost, no matter what is happening, a tactical sequence, especially one like with knight takes to the d5 as white did it, is only supposed to be available or good if we figured out the counterattacks. You see, in fact, the counterattack of black wasn't essentially analyzed carefully. It wasn't precisely looked at. So what did black do? Rook takes b2, king takes to the b2, and then after king takes to the b2, surely we could go ahead with the brilliant knight takes to e4. We're forcing a check against the white king that's got a real problem. It's not going anywhere, and the reality is if the king goes right back, then we're going to take the queen down, and we've got the d5, and it's just brilliant. One of the interesting parts of this whole example is the build-up that you get. A lot of good pieces that can really transfer each other on advanced, effective positions. And once you do, this really just works out greatly. Let's take those rook, let's get those pieces, and actually that's wonderful. Now, let's take a look at another interesting example of how a tactic could work. This time it's a little different, and we're actually going to see that it appears like white is making the tactic, but it really ends up black taking it. Which I played in the World Championship under 18 between a 2035 with 2358 opponent and 2231 player with white. This game illustrates another interesting aspect of how we can think about tactics. After the moves of e4, c5, black just played the normal line, g6, bishop g7, knight c6, it was all done correctly. And then he even allowed white to get to capture at the bishop out there. And why would we let that to happen? I mean, it didn't make any difference. It doesn't seem to make any difference. The reason why is basically very simple. The key idea is that if white takes it away, he's going to lose quite a bit of his control, and so that helps black out beautifully. White does knight x to the e6, bishop c4, knight d8. It's not a dangerous thing, although you might want to be actually quite careful about this. So point is that once white played knight b1, black plays queen c7. Remember, in Dragon, everything is about the piece play. If you can get a good piece play, you could actually play off of that, and many of the different tactical problems will be created beautifully. Then knight d7, rook f1, and knight c5. Regrouping that knight up to the c5 for usually e5 has a huge impact over the opponent's position. It challenges not only the b3 bishop as we see it happening right now, but it kind of almost drives white to start attacking a lot faster, like he does with the move of f4. And this is definitely not a good move. A move like pawn up to the f4 simply gave black the chance to attack more. Now, it was almost clear that white would follow up with a move of bishop takes to the e6, destroying here, or at least actually advancing or tactically threatening here. But it didn't work. If the move, or when the move of bishop to the x takes the e6 took place, black just took back, queen d5, and then there was the move of knight to c3, b takes to the c3, queen next to the c3. This type of sequence was wonderful, not only because of the threat that comes out against the b2 and a1, really driving a lot of problems over to the white king. I mean, that was definitely going to happen, but also because of the inability for white to do anything different. When white captured on the e6, black played king to the h8, and then, not just the king queen a1, but also the fact that white's king is awful looks like black's excellent way forward. What about white? Well, what about him? He's not good. He's definitely not great. He played king c1, queen takes a3, and rook c8. You see that this whole tactical combination didn't work because of the major problem. White started and he tried to engage an attack while he had badly placed pieces. He was much underprepared and he wasn't ready. None of those moves were actually ready and prepared, so he was not right to start this. When it happened, black was more prepared and he countered a lot more successfully.